And so in order to replace your new homepage or replace your old homepage with your new homepage, now is the time you want to get your ducks in a row. You aren't going to need to re-upload or synchronize your current index page. If you know you are going to have to do that, well, then you may want to postpone doing what I'm going to show you here. But if you're sure there's nothing else you need to upload between now and turning in Project 4, go ahead and do this with me. All I'm going to do is give my index page, my current index page, a different name. And then when I go to create my Project 4, well, when I save that file, I want to save it at the top level of the root directory, right? And I want to call it index, all lowercase, .html. And then you won't have a conflict of something already called that. But there's a really key thing that's important or you're going to mess everything up. So this is what you really want to pay attention to. So I'm going to click on this index file to rename it. And I'm just going to rename it index old. Nothing magic. Call it whatever you want, but maybe call it something so you know what it is. And then I'm just going to hit the enter key. And this is the important part. You're going to have more than I do here. But you want to make sure that you don't just click something that you regret later. So normally when you're making changes in your files window, it is a no-brainer. You want to update your file paths. But here's the thing. I've just renamed this index old. So if it redoes all the file paths and all the files that point to index old, that means that it will not link back to my new homepage. And so you do not want to update your links. You want them to continue to point to index.html. So I'm going to say don't update. Okay, that's it. So now all of your other pages still have a link going to the home page of index.html. And when you create your new home page called index.html, put it right there next to your current index page, now called index old. And then it's a no-brainer. You don't have to think. All the relationships stay exactly the same. If you put it into a Project 4 folder, then you're going to have to go through the whole process of moving images around, renaming them, and it's not that it's ridiculously hard, but why would you want to do that if you don't have to? Okay. Also a reminder, all of the images that you use on your home page should go into the images folder at the top level of your root. Okay, so right now, the only picture I've had in there is my ape picture that's on my home page. You want to put your pictures in there, all the pictures in there that are part of your new home page. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Okay, excellent. Good luck, Godspeed. May the force be with you. Let's see. I would like to close these now because they are dead to me. And what we want to do now is close. Yeah, I don't think we need him. Close that. And what I want to do is I have a folder that is filled with all the projects that were turned in like by an hour before class, I think it was, hour and a half. So if yours isn't in here, don't panic if you uploaded it, since then. So I already looked at all of them, and I picked out a few here that I think will be good, good demonstration examples. So what I want to do first is just kind of show you guys the PDFs. And let's see. No, Bailey's good, but I don't think I'll start with that. I think that's good. Yeah, Megan, I think, is a good one to start with. So I'm not going to open this in Photoshop. I'm just going to open it this way. So you guys can see that okay? Big enough? All right. And I'm going to get a piece of paper so I can sketch. And then we will kind of build this in Illustrator with just quick boxes and stuff. And so as you look at this, a lot of yours is going to have a very similar construction. This is actually fairly similar to the last couple of in-class assignments. And so I think you kind of have a sense of maybe what the structure might be. Initially, remember, outside in, you're going to build your wrapper. And so your wrapper is going to be 1024 by 768, most likely. It can be deeper, but it has to be 1024 wide. And then you're going to have your primary boxes inside. So how are you going to define those? Well, what I would do is I would build a box at the top up here. I would have another box underneath it that contains everything below that. Then I would have two boxes inside of here. Okay, so why do I have the big box? Well, because these two are going to be floats, and I want to contain those floats within a box. If I just have the top box and then two boxes underneath it floating, it gives some wiggle room for things to move around, and I don't like that. So tall, wide, short box here, and then a big box underneath it, and then two boxes inside of that. This one is, Megan, is this going to be a background image in here, the camera?
Yeah, so the camera's going to be a background, and then it's going to be like a GIF for the Polaroid going up. Okay,
so this will be part of the background or just be positioned in there, absolutely, and then this will be a GIF that as you roll over the projects, then the animation plays. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so that means there's another box there on top of this background image, say. And then over here, will this just be constant, Megan? The right side of your layout?
I'm planning to, if you hover over the box, the image is going to change.
Okay. So this is interactive, this box, in the middle of the picture. But welcome to Megan's portfolio will stay, and the type on the bottom will stay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So the reason I ask those questions and why they're important is if something isn't interactive, then it maybe could be a background image, which means it's just much simpler to deal with. And so I'm just doing a sketch here so that when we get into Illustrator, I remember what the heck is going on. Okay, let me do that. Before I do that, though, let me open up Megan's wireframe. And I'm not going to worry about the dimensions so much, but what I want you to look at is she did a good job. Now, one thing I wouldn't do when you're figuring out your pixels, and I know why you did it, Megan, and why a lot of you did it, is you have split pixels. And so I would get rid of those split pixels. You can split pixels, but it's so much simpler if everything is an even number. So I would just, how is this, is this like 1024 divided by 5 is 204.8? I don't know. And I'd make things an even pixel number as much as you possibly can. And I'm guessing that's what it was with this, because everything else is even pixels. And so you'll see she's done a really good job of defining not only the size of the boxes, but the space in between, such as here, this is padding, but probably better as margin. Although if this is all a background image here, which I think it very well could be, then you just have to position this box right here on top of that background image. So anyway, we'll talk about that more. And then over here on the right side, sadly, this little extension on the camera right here is causing this to be more complicated. But it's doable. That maybe this camera wouldn't be absolutely, or this wouldn't be a background image. I think it could just be absolutely positioned so that the camera can be on top of the GIF animation. Okay, so I think that could work out rather nicely. And then these are obviously just boxes that are going to have remote rollovers. And so very cool. All right, so let's go into Illustrator now. And I'm not gonna really deal with sizes here. I'm just going to draw boxes and talk about concepts. All right. So we would start off with our wrapper. Okay. Now the wrapper again, is most likely going to be 1024 by 768, the required size. So that's good. Now, what if you want that to be centered in the browser window? Well, then you would give the wrapper a left and right margin of auto, right? And that will center it in the browser window horizontally. Do you want it going all the way to the top of the page, or do you want it down a little bit from the top of the page? So what you got to remember, if you're looking this, like my desktop computer is gigantic. So when I look at your web pages, you know, they're just a pretty small part of the screen. And this really bothers a lot of students because you think, oh, it's going to fill my whole screen no matter what I'm looking at it on. Well, no, that's not true. If you're looking at it on a computer or a tablet or a phone, it will pretty much just fill the screens of those. But anything bigger than a small laptop, it's going to have white space around it. So that begs a couple of questions. Number one, where is it relative to whatever size the browser window is, side to side and up and down? What do you want the background color to be if you are seeing background around your page? So do you want it to stay white, which it is by default, or do you want to make it black or a color or whatever? So those are all decisions you make, but do understand that it's not going to fill your whole computer screen. That's for the advanced class. Because we're dealing with the fixed sizes, it's going to be smaller. So those decisions need to be made about the wrapper, besides the width and the height, just the position within the browser window. Then I'm going to have another box that is going to be at the top of this, and this will just be normal document flow inside of the wrapper. And then I'm going to have another box underneath this that will hold the two boxes that are inside of it. So this has the small button boxes up here. Then this has another box here that will hold the camera. And then another box here that will hold Megan's picture. So may not be in exact proportion there, but you get the idea. So box and box and box. And that's kind of the way I would build it. It's like from the biggest box, then work to the smaller boxes. Okay, so now I'm back to the top box. So this is where I'm going to put in my 5 boxes. And so all the dimensions you're going to get from your wireframe. Well, I think I have too many boxes and they don't all fit, but you get the idea. So this box is going to be a class, right? So even though each of these boxes are going to have different contents, they're all going to be the same width and height. And so why not call this, say, dot button box? And instead of creating 5 different rules or 6 different rules, you create one set of rules that you then apply 5 or 6 times. Okay, so these would be classes. Everything else probably will be an ID because you only need one of them because they're unique. Now down here with the side with your camera and the GIF animation, this is a case where I think I wouldn't, if you want that little bump on the side of the camera that the GIF animation is behind, which is a nice detail, then that keeps it from being a background image because you can't have anything behind a background image except another background image. And it can't be a background image for the GIF animation because you can't do a swap image on anything but a regular image. So if I take my camera, so I'm going to have a box for that camera. And so again, Megan knows the size of that. And she's going to position that right there. Now, I would argue that absolute positioning would be a good way to go with this. It doesn't have to be, but what's nice about absolute positioning is it takes it out of normal document flow. And that's actually a plus in this case. And then she's going to have another box that each of her GIF animations are going to be in. And so that's going to be another box. And that box might even, it's going to be a little go below the camera. So that it goes behind that little button. Okay. And so let's just say that little button or whatever that is there. And so now that little picture is behind it, okay? So these would be absolutely positioned, meaning that this containing box here, in other words, its parent, that guy there, is going to have a position of what? What is it you establish for the parent container when you absolutely position a box inside of it? What type of positioning do you specify? Starts with an R.
Relative position.
Relative positioning, that's right. And the reason why is, remember, when you absolutely position, it looks for its closest parent container to relate the measurements to. And so it must have a position. That close parent container must have a position, and relative will keep it in the same place but give it a position. And so that means that the point I would be arranging things from is the top left point of this box right here. And so I would position the camera, absolutely, and then I would position this box absolutely too. And that's going to have an image inside of it to be replaced with the GIF animation. So that's how I would do that side. On this side, I would, oops. Oh my God, go away. Thank you. All right. So this side, this is going to be pretty much a background image. And it will be, the type will be in it, and the picture frame will be in it. And then what you're going to have to do, Megan, is then put another box in the exact right position in the middle of the photo frame. And then that's what will have the interactivity, is just the stuff that's in that box. So it will start off with a picture of you, and then when you roll over it, it will change to whatever you want it to become. So for that, you can do it either way. You could do it just with normal document flow and just give it margin on the left and the top to kind of scooch it into position. Or you could also do absolute positioning for that as well. It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And then that's it. Then it's just a matter of inserting all your images and creating your remote rollover behavior. Like I said, just like we've done the last 2 weeks. So Megan's in good shape because she has her imagery pretty much resolved, it looks like. She has all of her measurements. And let me go back here and show you her rough again so you can see what we're talking about. Okay, so yeah, my buttons were way off, not even close. Does that make sense, Megan?
It does, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And does that make sense to you guys too? Okay. So let's do at least one more. Let's do Carlos here. This is his wireframe. That's him. And this is his Comm. Okay. Okay, so this is a little bit different, but also kind of similar in that it's really just boxes that you need to figure out how to organize. And so again, we're going to start off with our wrapper. And then we're going to start off by making the box at the top to contain those 4 buttons. And then he has 2 boxes inside, one for the sidebar and then one for the big picture of his head. Now, Carlos, tell us what is going to happen. What is the interactivity with your design here?
Well, basically, this is just like the, can you hear me right?
It's the what?
Can you guys hear me well?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the actual like homepage is going to be at like when you click on the home. But for this project, I basically wanted to start off on this one.
Okay.
But
that primary navigation page, at least for the projects area. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like I'll probably make the head a little smaller, and like as I click on the projects on the left, like maybe like a, I don't know, like a thought bubble will come out with the, like, yeah, just with the
Okay, like a
project or
preview
something like that.
of the project.
Yeah.
Then? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So basically, you'll have a box for your head, and then a box for, say, the thought bubble for now.
Yeah.
That are going to be inside of that. So okay, that's good. So I'm gonna indicate that. And I really like the black bar over your eyes. I mean, that's it. To me, that's the classic thing they used to do to people when you'd see their picture in the newspaper and they were trying to hide their identity. They'd cover up their picture with a black bar over the eyes. Like somehow just hiding the eyes made that person indistinguishable. So I don't know if that's what you were going for, but that's definitely what I took from. It makes you look a little criminal, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I just couldn't actually draw them, so I just put the bar over it.
I might take off the Carlos on the side. To me, that's a little visually distracting, and maybe just repeat your name, your whole name, at the bottom, or just have Carlos go across your eyes, and then have Carlos Rodriguez at the bottom next to Comm 380. I think it would just simplify it a lot and make it a little less distraction to the primary idea. So I think I have a sense on what boxes to build. So you guys remember that. And then let's look at the wireframe here. And so Carlos also did a very good job. So it looks like he's got width and height. And he's got the space between the boxes up here. That is great. So Carlos, if you relay this out, you're going to have to go through this process again. Because those measurements are going to change. And then all through here is good too. So Carlos really did an excellent job, and he's even thinking ahead about using floats and so forth. So that's all good. That's all really good thinking. All right, so let's go to Illustrator again. And let's see. I'm just going to take this off to the side in case we need to refer to it. And again, here is the wrapper. So again, all the same thing I said before about positioning within the browser window. You guys need to decide how much margin on the sides. Is it centered in the browser window? Is there a background color? You need to consider all of that. So inside of it, Carlos is going to have a similar approach. He is going to, inside of his wrapper, have a wide short box that will hold some of his navigation. Underneath that, he will have a secondary box that will hold the content inside of it. And so the first bit of content is the sidebar, which is over here. And then the second bits of content are going to be his head image, which I'm going to say is right there. And then also his thought bubble image, which I'm going to say is right there. And then he also has some text down at the bottom here. So if he keeps it under his head, then that could actually just be another box right there. Okay, so that's good. Now, how is he going to position all of this? Well, Carlos really doesn't need anything but kind of normal floats on here. Up here at the top with these buttons, he can just float all of those left so they just go right next to each other. He can put margin in there to get the right amount of separation between the buttons. That's great. Over here on the left, this is, pretty much normal document flow. So he can just have top and bottom margins to push things the correct distance from each other. This box itself that content is inside of can just be floated to the left. It's quite simple. And then these two boxes would be floated to the right, would be how I would do it. And so keep in mind the order of your boxes matters on this. And so if in the code, this big box here is first and this little box here is after it in the code, If I put a float right on both of them, I'll end up with this relationship. So whatever is floated to the right first will go all the way to the right, and whatever is floated to the right next will go as far to the right as it can before it hits the other box. So if you wanted this box to be over here, you'd have to flip the order of them inside of the code, if that makes sense. You'll see what I mean. But float right is a little different beast than float left. But that will get all those in position. So it's just a matter of creating the boxes just the way he wants them. I would recommend that on all of you guys, you make your images be exactly the same size as the boxes they're going into. That's really important because when you put something in a box and the box is bigger than the image, well, then you have to deal with positioning the image inside of the box. That's a pain in the butt. And you never want your image to be bigger than the box it's going into, because then things get resized that aren't necessarily in proportion. And so make sure all of your images, when you export them, are the same size as the box they're going into. Now, if, for instance, Carlos needed this word balloon to be closer to his head, so maybe his head curves here and he really wants the word balloon to go into that white space, then he's into absolute positioning so that he can overlap those two boxes a little bit. So kind of depending what you want to do, Carlos, is going to determine which form of positioning is going to work better for you on this. Okay, Kat, what are you doing? She's ruining all my piles, people. So what questions does anybody have about these two ideas or these two approaches to making this so far? Any questions? Is it totally making sense? Is it not making sense? Do you feel you're missing any information?
I feel like my project doesn't make sense. I struggled with the wireframe, therefore I'm having a hard time visualizing how to approach my
okay, page. Yeah. Let's look at yours, DJ. Yours is actually really easy.
It feels abstract. That's why I feel like I'm probably overthinking it, but yeah.
Probably, yeah. Here's your wireframe and your comp kind of together. So your wireframe, quite honestly, is useless because all you've done is indicate the size of the objects, but you haven't indicated the position of the objects. So what you need to do is go into your Photoshop file and find out the X and Y position for each one of those. Once you do, then you're flying, my friend, because that's absolute positioning at that point. And so your X will be the left positioning, and your Y will be the top positioning. And that is what will allow you to position those. So say the X and Y of this number one here is, say 100X and then 250Y. Well, then for this box, you would say position absolute, and then you'd say left 100 pixels, top 250 pixels. And that's it. Then it will go into that exact position. So it's very easy to get the exact result you want with absolute positioning because you just have to type in the right numbers that you can get pretty easily from Photoshop and Illustrator. Does that make sense?
Somewhat, yeah, now. Because when I was watching your video and I had got confused. I had watched the video so many times. It was like, oh, take this image, subtract it from this. And I was trying to follow that formula, and every time I watched it, I was like, it doesn't make sense what you were saying. This makes sense.
That's because that was more traditional with normal document flow and floats. The minute you get into absolute positioning, it's much more direct. And so it doesn't, the other elements in here don't care about where the other elements are because they're all being independently positioned, and so they don't relate to each other at all. Whereas if you have normal document flow or you have floats, they recognize the other elements and react to them. And so that's when you have to figure out exact margins and stuff in between things to get them to go where you want. but absolute is easy. So if you have those X and Y coordinates, great, you're home free. If you don't, then, go get them, and then you're ready to go. And so your space here will be a background image. And then I know you have a graphic for your gravity here. In fact, you have several that are the rollovers, that as you roll over each of these, then this central image changes. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. And so you've got these all ready to go, which is great. And you've, already got this area kind of masked out, so they'll just plop in there perfectly.
So I guess my follow-up question would be is, how much of this would be a background image? I know the planets wouldn't be, and the numbers. So how many elements would there be here? The center, so a box for the big container, and then a container for the gravity, and then containers for, would there be 2 containers for the planets, one for the planet itself and one for the number?
Well, it depends. What's going to go on with those? Are these a rollover as well as a remote rollover? So in other words, when I roll over the 1, does that change?
No, I didn't plan on that. I just plan on having the gravity, the center of it change. So it would just be more of an indicator. When you roll over the number, I mean, I could change the color, but I kind of like how it is. It was just the focus of the center page that was going to change.
But see how it works. You may discover that you want it to change if it seems a little static, but it's going to be hard to know till you see it. But no, you're just going to have one box, and I would just make the 1 be part of that planet image. And then if you do want it to change, then it's just going to be a standard rollover where you have the planet with a colored number on top of it. So it's just both the 1 and the planet are a single image. And then that would obviously trigger this remote rollover too. So to answer your question, you'd have your wrapper box, which will have a background image of your basic spiral galaxy. And then you're going to have 5 boxes, 1 for each planet number project, and then 1 for the big gravity box. So you'll just have 6 boxes inside of the wrapper. And then your type down here would be another box.
Gotcha.
And you can even, if you want, you can even make that be part of the background image, DJ. It doesn't even have to be another box. You could just have that be in the background image.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking, because I didn't plan on doing any rollovers. I took your advice when our meeting. You're like, just change the name so you could kind of distinct between like you and then, the interactive and the title of the class.
Yeah, I think it looks great. Yeah.
Okay,
I love that color.
It wasn't as complicated as I thought, but I guess the abstract image really blew my mind. So I was like, where are these boxes coming from?
No, you did a good job on these. I looked at all of your images and everything's looking good. It was really, you just were mixing the connection with the X, how important the X and Y were. But, don't worry, your grade's not going to be affected by that. So I think you'll be surprised how simple it is. This is going to take you not very much time at all, which is good, because then if you decide you want to make aesthetic changes, you'll have the time to do it.
Gotcha. So my main first goal is getting these X and Ys for the planets. That's my thing. Okay.
Yep. And I won't take you too long at all. So very good job, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I think at this point I'm just going to open it up to people who would like, who have questions or want feedback on if I have your design in here. Now, if I don't, you're just going to have to ask a more general question. But does anyone have anything they want to ask or see or don't understand or that?
Yeah, Professor, can you go for mine really quick? Because I was a little confused. I know I did the wrapper wrong, but after listening to the other students, but
yeah. Oh, I liked yours. Yours was okay. So this is Bree Marie's comp. I really love that. That's so poetic. Okay, and then the rollover is going to be this. So as you roll over each of the flowers, they will change color. And then your wireframe is this, and I wasn't understanding what all of these numbers were. If they were just width and height,
Yeah,
I think
they
that's
were.
what they
I
are.
didn't do any of the X or Y's.
Okay. Yeah, so for yours, let me go back to just your comp here. Probably the best way to go with yours, Bree, would be to have absolute positioning, I think. I mean, it would be possible to do this with floats and margins and stuff, but I think you'll have an easier time just getting things positioned just the way you want. To me, this layout shouldn't really be mathematical. It should be more organic. In other words, it should just feel like it's balanced and working well. And so that means that maybe everything isn't perfectly centered and spaced compared to everything else. So absolute positioning would be ideal. Now, in terms of getting the pink border and the white inside, there's an interesting way you can do that. Let me go into Illustrator, and I'm actually going to do something that I should have been doing all along. And I'm going to go ahead and just place your comp into here, which is a little too smart. Okay. This is actually an Illustrator file. I could have just opened it, but anyway. Okay, so there we go. So there is your comp. And so you could make yourself crazy trying to figure out how to do that. I mean, is that pink on the left a border of the left and the right that's really thick? It could be, but there's a much simpler way to do it. So I would make one box that would be your wrapper, and I would actually make that box be pink. I don't have a good pink in here. What a jip. Okay, and so I would make that box be pink, and then I would make another box inside of it that is white, and I would just float that box to the right, and therefore creates that nice pink L border. And then this, in essence, will become the container for all of your flowers in the centerpiece. Now, in terms of the Comm 380 interactive design, I would humbly suggest that you not have vertical stacked type there. Okay. It's just kind of old-fashioned, and it's not easy to read. And it's actually making this really important because it's the only vertical stack type there is. So Comm 380 interactive media design shouldn't be that important. What's important is you. And so you are the most important here, but you should be even more important than that. So I would take Comm 380 interactive media design and just kind of make that, a single line of type maybe on the bottom, pretty small, just so it's there, readable, but not really an important element. And then in terms of all the stuff in here, then if you're doing it absolute positioning, you could actually have this, the Brie Marie portfolio inside of the white box. You could actually have that be a background image, and then everything else can just go on top of that. So the Brie Marie or portfolio, and then this white background would all be a background image. Mm-hmm. And then you could absolutely position the boxes for each one of your flowers just kind of wherever you want. Like I said, it could even be fairly organic in that they aren't, mathematically distributed. They're actually in different places. They could even vary in size if you wanted to as well. And absolute positioning is nice for that because you can keep changing it within Dreamweaver. You don't have to figure it out exactly, in your wireframe. Okay, yours should actually be pretty easy.
I had one more question too. For the flower petals, I actually created them on Illustrator, like each individually. So it's not a complete object unless you click on the entire flower. Would that be difficult when I'm doing my rollovers?
No, because you'll export it as a web image, and that web image will be the whole flower. Because you don't want the petals to be independently interactive, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, yeah. So that's easy. One thing you might do. Let me just open up your file and show you a nice trick. So, say I'm going to go to your first one. And so now, what is your interactivity going to be, Bree? What's going to change when you roll over things? Just the color of the flower?
That was my main idea, but I'm thinking that where it says Brie Marie, like the background where the pink, it'll change.
Okay, so that's cool. All right, so then that wouldn't be part of your background image then. I think you'd also have to absolutely position that too. Okay. Which is fine. And then you'll just have a series of art with Brie Marie portfolio with different color backgrounds. One thing you can do. Okay, so let me change my view here so I can mark just a flower. And I'm going to get that box and I'm going to group this and go back here. Okay, so that's just a single flower now. Oh, looks like I lost the one. Come here, one. Oh, that's what's in the box. Gotcha. All right. These on different layers. Ah. Okay, well, I'm just not going to worry about the one. So we're just going to take this whole thing, copy this, and then I'm going to paste this into a new document. Then what's cool about this is then you could create all of this in Photoshop. So if you had like another layer, and on that layer you put the number 1. So let me do that. Let me just show you. And this may help some of you guys. So if you worked in Illustrator or in Photoshop, doesn't matter. Okay, so there's our 1. And I'm going to put the 1 on its own layer. Boom. And I'm going to put project, I think, on its own layer too. Oh, I should ungroup this now. Ungroup. And I'm going to put that on the same layer as number 1. So now I have a 2-layer file, the flower and the project 1. And then you could also create different layers for project 2, project 3, project 4, and you could also have layers too for each color flower. And they're all on their own independent layers. So that's a starting point. Now, once you've got that, here's the cool part. If I go here, because actually exporting for the web from Illustrator, it works, but Photoshop is better for this. And so if I go to export, and I'm going to say export as, I can choose the format to be Photoshop.psd. Okay, so I'm just going to call this flower and put it in your folder. Click export, and then look at this. It allows me to choose the color mode, which is RGB. It allows me to choose the resolution, which is 72. Oh, but that's the problem. I must change the document color mode to be RGB. So you do that by going to the File menu, pulling the document color mode, changing to RGB. That's important because if you have RGB, then it allows you to save the different layers independently, which is what makes this so cool. So I can now export. Same thing. Photoshop flower. Export. And now RGB, 72 PPI, I can write layers. I can even preserve the text editability. Maximum editability, not really necessary. And then that will be good. So I'm going to click OK. Okay, so now that is a Photoshop file. If I go here and then open this in Photoshop, look at that. There is my flower. It's exactly in a document, exactly the size of the flower. And if I come over here to my layers, there's my type. And guess what? My type is even editable. So I can go in and I can change that 1 to a 2. And voila. Then I can save for web from here. And I can actually have all those flowers, all the different type, all the different colors I need, all in one file, just all here in Photoshop. That not only simplifies the number of files you have, so instead of having 20 files, you have 1, and you also really speeds up the time it takes for you to create your web images, because it's really just a matter of turning layers on and off as you save for the web. Yeah. And so I hope that helps you a little bit, and I hope it helps others of you in the class for as you get into this production mode of the best way to do it. But you definitely want your images to be separated, and you want them to be in a document size that is the same size as the image before you save for web, because then when you save for web, you are saving it at exactly the right size that is going to match the box it's going inside of. And all of those things are going to make your production so much easier, and they're going to make it much more likely that you're going to get the result that you want to get. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it helped a lot. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. This is fun stuff. I love this stuff, and I don't get to teach that stuff very much.